Did you know that ancient Egyptians had a pregnancy test that involved wheat and barley? Yes, you heard that right. It's fascinating to think about how they determined pregnancy thousands of years ago. Stick around because what follows will absolutely blow your mind. Not only are we going to explore this ancient test in detail, but we'll also dive into the broader context of ancient medicine, societal expectations, and the surprising ways their methods intersect with modern science. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into a truly mesmerizing topic, ancient Egyptian pregnancy tests. You might be wondering, why is this important? Well, understanding how past civilizations approached something as fundamental as pregnancy gives us a unique glimpse into their world. It reveals their medical practices, their beliefs, and even their fears. So, buckle up, because we're about to unravel a mystery that's been buried in the sands of time. Introduction to Ancient Egyptian Medicine. Before we get into the specifics of the pregnancy test, let's take a moment to appreciate the broader context of ancient Egyptian medicine. The Egyptians were incredibly advanced for their time. They had medical texts that covered everything from surgery to dentistry. Their approach to medicine was a fascinating blend of the spiritual and the empirical. They believed that gods and spirits played a significant role in health and illness, yet they also observed and documented symptoms, experimented with treatments, and kept detailed records. Imagine being an ancient Egyptian healer, known as a Swanaw, tasked with diagnosing and treating patients. You didn't have the luxury of modern tools, but you had an impressive array of herbs, poultices, and yes, even magical spells. And at the heart of your practice was the desire to understand the body and its mysteries. Pregnancy, of course, was one of the greatest mysteries of all. Presentation of problem challenge. Now let's zoom in on the specific challenge of determining pregnancy. For the ancient Egyptians, this was more than just a medical question. It was a matter of immense social and personal importance. In a society where lineage and inheritance were crucial, knowing whether a woman was pregnant, and perhaps even the sex of the child, was vital information. But here's where it gets tricky. The Egyptians didn't have the advanced technology we do today. There were no ultrasounds, no hormone tests, and certainly no home pregnancy kits. What they did have was keen observation and a deep connection to the natural world. Determining pregnancy was a mix of these observations, combined with some creative experimentation. Imagine the pressure on women in this society. Pregnancy could mean security, especially if a male heir was expected. But failure to conceive, or the inability to carry a pregnancy to term, could lead to social stigma or worse. The need to determine pregnancy as early and as accurately as possible drove these ancient healers to develop methods that were as reliable as their knowledge allowed. The ancient Egyptian pregnancy test, a deep dive. So how exactly did they do it? One of the most interesting methods involved, believe it or not, urine and seeds. Yes, the ancient Egyptians developed a pregnancy test using wheat and barley. Here's how it worked. A woman suspected of being pregnant would provide a sample of her urine. This urine was then poured over a mix of barley and wheat seeds. The idea was that if the seeds began to sprout, the woman was pregnant. And here's the kicker. If the barley sprouted first, it indicated a male child, while wheat suggested a female child. Can you imagine the anticipation as the seeds were monitored for signs of life? This method, while it might seem quaint or even humorous to us today, was taken very seriously by the Egyptians. They believed that the urine of a pregnant woman contained certain properties that would encourage germination. And while this might sound like pure superstition, modern science has shown that there could be some truth to it. Exploring the science behind it now, here's where things get really fascinating. Modern studies have taken a closer look at this ancient test, and while it certainly doesn't compare to today's scientific methods, it turns out that there might be something to it. You see, the urine of a pregnant woman does contain elevated levels of certain hormones, particularly HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. These hormones could, in theory, have an impact on the growth of plants. While it's unlikely that this method would be foolproof, it's not entirely without merit. Think about that for a moment. Thousands of years ago, without the benefit of microscopes, chemical tests, or any of the tools we rely on today, the Egyptians stumbled upon a method that, in some cases, might have actually worked. It's a testament to their observational skills and their willingness to experiment with the natural world around them. Let's take a quick detour here to discuss how this compares to modern pregnancy tests. Today, we rely on tests that detect HCG in urine with incredible accuracy. These tests are so precise that they can often detect pregnancy just a few days after conception. The difference in accuracy between modern tests and the ancient Egyptian method is like night and day. But the underlying principle, the idea that something in the urine changes when a woman is pregnant, is surprisingly consistent. Societal implications and gender expectations. But there's another layer to this story that we haven't touched on yet, the societal implications of these tests. In ancient Egypt, as in many ancient societies, the ability to produce offspring, particularly male offspring, was of immense importance. It wasn't just a personal or family matter. It was a societal expectation. Imagine the pressure on women. Imagine the anxiety as they waited for the seeds to sprout, hoping for a sign that they were carrying a child, and perhaps even more importantly, that they were carrying a son. The sprouting of barley over wheat could bring joy or despair, depending on the cultural and familial expectations. This aspect of ancient Egyptian life gives us a window into their values and their worldview. It shows us how deeply intertwined medicine, society, and gender were, and how these ancient tests were about more than just determining pregnancy. They were about fulfilling a role within a family and society. Climax: the surprising validity of ancient methods. Now, back to the most surprising part of this whole story, the potential validity of these ancient tests. As we've discussed, modern studies suggest that the Egyptians might have been onto something. The chemical composition of a pregnant woman's urine could indeed affect plant growth. While this method is nowhere near as reliable as modern tests, it's incredible to think that these ancient people were experimenting with something so close to the truth. It's also worth noting that the Egyptians weren't alone in their creative approaches to pregnancy testing. Other ancient cultures had their own methods, some of which are equally fascinating. For example, in ancient Greece, a woman suspected of being pregnant might be given a mixture of honey and water to drink before bed. If she experienced certain symptoms the next morning, it was taken as a sign of pregnancy. Again, this isn't scientifically sound by today's standards, but it shows the lengths to which people have gone to understand and predict pregnancy. When you stack these ancient methods against today's tests, which rely on precise measurements of hormone levels, it becomes a fascinating comparison. We've come a long way from barley and wheat to sophisticated home tests, but there's something charming and even admirable about the simplicity and ingenuity of those ancient methods. Modern implications. What can we learn? So what can we learn from all of this? First and foremost, it's a reminder of the incredible ingenuity of ancient peoples. Without the tools and knowledge that we take for granted today, they found ways to address the challenges they faced. Their methods might not have been perfect, but they were born out of observation, experimentation, and a deep connection to the natural world. There's also a lesson here about the importance of cultural and historical context. When we look at something like the ancient Egyptian pregnancy test, it's easy to dismiss it as primitive or superstitious. But when we dig deeper, we see that it was a product of its time, a time when people were doing the best they could with the knowledge and resources they had. Finally, this story is a reminder of how far we've come in the field of medicine. Today, we have the ability to detect pregnancy with a simple test that can be done at home, and we have the tools to monitor and support pregnancy in ways that our ancestors could never have imagined. But as advanced as we are, it's important to remember and respect the efforts of those who came before us. In conclusion, the ancient Egyptian pregnancy test is a fascinating glimpse into the past. It reveals a lot about their culture, their medical practices, and their understanding of the world. They faced significant challenges in determining pregnancy, but their innovative solutions show a deep connection to the natural world and a willingness to experiment. This journey into the past also gives us a new appreciation for the tools and knowledge we have today. We've come a long way, but the ingenuity of ancient peoples, like the Egyptians, reminds us that the quest for knowledge and understanding is as old as humanity itself. Now, I want to hear from you. What surprised you the most about these ancient pregnancy tests? Did you find any parallels with modern practices that you hadn't considered before? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your perspectives. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient medical practices, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. We've got a lot more fascinating content coming your way, from the weird and wonderful health hacks of history to the groundbreaking medical advancements of today. And hey, if you've got a topic you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.